Welcome to the Lenny and Maria Sanchez Notebook, lmvideos.com overview show. Okay, so let's jump right in. We are tracking some major developments shaping our world right now. We're talking about a really controversial peace plan, a city that's basically on the brink, and a new global axis that's starting to form. All right, first up, let's turn to Ukraine. There has been a huge pivot on the war, coming directly from President Trump's recent summit with Vladimir Putin. And this is a pretty significant shift in strategy, and it's already making waves. So right after that summit, the president hopped on Truth Social with this message. He's really framing this new strategy as, the fastest way to peace. But it's a massive break, a really sharp, controversial one from what Western policy has been for a long, long time. So get this. The core of the plan completely bypasses a ceasefire. It goes straight to negotiating who gets what territory. And let's be honest, that is essentially what Moscow has been asking for all along. It changes the entire game.
Now, when you look at the actual proposed land swap, wow, the imbalance is just striking. Ukraine would be giving up around 2,500 square miles of really fortified land, and in return, they'd get back about 170. If you run the numbers, that means Russia walks away with 1,500% more territory. That's not a typo. 1,500%.
So you can imagine this created a huge, immediate split. On one side, you have the White House, with Secretary of State Marco Rubio calling it a balanced settlement. But on the other side, European leaders were super quick to shut that down. They basically said, nope, borders can't be changed by force, and the sanctions will keep escalating as long as the fighting continues. And it's not just about the land. There's a whole package of other conditions on the table. Ukraine would have to withdraw from Donetsk and Luhansk, Putin would freeze the fighting, and this is the big one, Ukraine would be permanently barred from ever joining NATO. In exchange, though, they'd supposedly get these really robust NATO-like security guarantees from the US and Europe. The US Special Envoy is actually calling that part a breakthrough. Okay, so let's shift gears now. We're moving from Europe over to the Middle East, where Israel is really facing a war on two fronts. One is the obvious one, on the battlefield, but the other one, it's happening right inside its own borders. So that first front is, of course, the military one. Israel has started distributing tents and supplies for a mass relocation of civilians out of Gaza City. This is a pretty clear signal that the next big offensive, the one everyone's been waiting for, is about to begin. But while the IDF is drawing up its battle plans, a completely different kind of fight is breaking out back home. We're talking about massive civil unrest. It's really creating a pressure cooker environment for the government trying to wage a war. And the scale of these protests is just unbelievable. We're talking about nearly 1 million Israelis taking to the streets. This is one of the largest demonstrations since the war started. You've got businesses, universities, all shutting down in solidarity. And their demand is clear. Get a hostage deal done and end the fighting. And this really gets to the core of why they're at a standstill. On one hand, you have Prime Minister Netanyahu, who is demanding total victory. No compromises. But on the other, Hamas is now dangling this new partial deal. And you have to wonder, is this a real offer? Or is it a calculated move to pour gasoline on that fire of internal dissent that's already burning in Israel? All right, and while all that is going on, another huge power dynamic is shifting in the region. Iran is looking to rebuild its military might after that recent conflict with Israel, and it's looking east for a new, powerful friend. Yeah, new intelligence is suggesting that Beijing is really doubling down on its support for Iran's ballistic missile program. After feeling kind of let down by Russia, Tehran is now turning to China to help restock its missile arsenal, which, took a serious hit during that 12-day war with Israel. And look, this isn't just a simple weapons sale. This is a deep strategic partnership. Iran is ordering missile parts from China. China is then supplying Iran with advanced missile defense systems to protect those assets. And how is this all being funded? Well, China is buying over 90% of Iran's sanctioned oil. It's a self-sustaining loop. This quote here from the IDF Chief of Staff, Herzi Halevi, really says it all. We are ready to pay a heavy price to ensure our survival. That is a direct message to both Iran and China. It's basically saying, if this threat continues to grow, we are prepared to strike again. Okay, and for our last story, we're coming back home to the U.S., specifically to Washington, D.C., where a major power play is unfolding between the federal government and the city itself. It's a real fight over policing and authority. So, what's at the heart of all this?
It's a little-known part of the Home Rule Act, Section 740. It basically allows a president to federalize the D.C. police force in an emergency. And that's exactly what President Trump did, invoking this provision to launch an anti-crime crackdown and put the city's police under federal command. And things escalated fast. I mean, look at this timeline. On Monday, Trump federalizes the police and brings in the National Guard. By Thursday, there's a new emergency police commissioner. By Friday, D.C.'s attorney general is filing a lawsuit, calling it a hostile takeover. The whole thing blew up so quickly that by the weekend, the administration actually had to revise its order after a judge raised some serious legal questions. So they reached a sort of temporary compromise. DC's police chief is still in charge of day-to-day stuff, but the fight is far from over. The administration is demanding the police rescind policies that limit cooperation with federal immigration agents, while the DC Council is arguing the federal government has no right to just revoke city laws. The core conflict is still simmering. It all just leaves you wondering, from these huge diplomatic gambles to intense domestic power plays, how are leaders going to navigate a world where the established rules just seem to be constantly challenged? Thank you for listening to another session of the Lenny and Maria Sanchez Video Overview Show, produced and archived at the website notebooklmvideos.com.